and welcome to Target. Just kidding, welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by, for the last time this week from a remote location, Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. So wait, by that justification, though, I'm in the remote location now?
I guess so. What, are you in the office or are you at home?
I'm at home.
There you go, you're remote. You're
Indeed,
you're 1 mile from the office, I'm 850 miles, same difference.
Indeed. You still seem to be fascinated by geography and how big this country is, as though you're still getting used to like the concept of multiple states being huge.
Well, if I was doing this in England, I'd be, I think, somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea doing this.
Yeah, I think so.
I guess it's just the vastness of America. It still fascinates me. I like to let our listeners know that we're not in the same room when that's happening.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I'm still laughing at the idea of like the vastness of America because you drew from the southeast to the southeast.
The farther southeast.
True.
All right, Taylor, on today's show, I want to give a mention to the Minnesota United being sponsored by Target News and Target becoming an MLS sponsor.
Yeah.
I've got a good joke for you.
What's that?
They could do the targeted allocation money could be sponsored by Target. It should be just called Target Allocation Money.
Yeah, I like it.
And you can spend it in any aisle of Target except the electronics aisle.
That works. I saw a bunch of people talking about like, oh, like how are they going to be a jersey sponsor? That's going to be interesting. And it reminded me of the fact that the Richmond Kickers have had Target as a jersey sponsor, and I believe they had them. I believe they had Targets on the backs of their shorts. Wow. I could be wrong, but I believe that was where that sponsor was.
There you go, Richmond Kickers once again ahead of the curve in US soccer,
always and forever.
Speaking of the Richmond Kickers, later on today's show, I'll be talking to USL President Jake Edwards. I'm saying that like it's future tense. I already have spoken to him. I will be dropping that 15-minute interview into today's episode. I'm going to ask Jake Edwards about sort of USL Division 2 sanctioning and all that stuff that went down with US soccer. I've got some insights, the stuff he couldn't reveal, but if you're interested in all that, then definitely stick around for that interview about halfway through today's show.
Alrighty. People should do that. But in the meantime, Daryl Grove, we've got some other stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we do. We sort of debated this, right? Whether to talk about the Tim Howard comments in USA Today. It seems to me that it's become such a big story with a lot of people having different opinions on it. We feel compelled to wade in.
That we do. I mean, yeah, and I think it's mostly because we've talked about this stuff before with Abby Wambach, with Landon Donovan, and I mean, it's kind of obvious what our take is going to be, but I think it's still worth discussing it.
So for people who are unaware, this is what in Tuesday's USA Today. Shall I just read the quote so that we know where we're starting from?
Sure.
Tim Howard said, "What I think Bruce Arena will add is this ability to truly believe in the shirt, and I think we lost that a little bit over the last couple of years," referring to what Klinsmann did. Howard said, "I think it slips away because you bring in," and then literally in the USA Today article, there's an ellipses, and then there's Howard began before pausing for thought. Jurgen Klinsmann had a project to unearth talent around the world that had American roots, but having American roots doesn't mean you are passionate about playing for that country. Sounding all a little bit Abby Wambach-y, right? I'm going to give you the final paragraph, Taylor, before I ask you to weigh in on this, because this is a lot more of the context to it, right? He says, "I know there were players that came in that it didn't matter as much to. If you get enough of those players, one or two can get found out. But if you get enough of those players, you lose sight of what you are all about. While it was a good idea in theory, it had its flaws. Bruce will 100% get that back."
Yes. So since then, he did another exclusive interview with ESPN where he was asked about this. I think he was trying to clarify what he had said. He said in reference to those comments about people not being like motivated to play for the U.S., some of them are dual nationals, but I think others are players who have their roots here in America, too. It's not exclusive to them because some of our dual nationals have been brilliant. Jermaine Jones has been a rock for the national team. He's been one of the heartbeats. Fabian Johnson has been brilliant for us. So, no, that wasn't aimed at any one particular person.
Interesting. Do you believe him, or is that backtracking?
I don't believe him.
Okay.
I think that's backtracking. I think I get what he means. Okay, and I want to say here, maybe it's worth mentioning that I do think that these types of comments from Tim Howard, I don't necessarily agree with them, but on the basic level, I do think they're still different than what Abby Wambach was saying.
Yes,
and
I do
think
too.
For two reasons. Okay.
We'll get into that. Yeah, you want to get into it now?
Yeah, I think we may as well just at the outset because I think it's worth kind of differentiating. Because then we're going to discuss his comments, and I think you kind of have to explain why they're different.
Okay, do you want me to
at least in my mind.
Do you want me to give you the Abby Wambach comments then?
Yeah, sure.
Abby Wambach said in what as recently as December, I think, she said she was following up on something she said the previous year. It feels a little bit odd to me that you have some guys that have never lived in the United States that play for the United States because they were able to secure a passport. To me, that just feels like they weren't able to make it for their country and earn a living, so they're coming here. But do they have that killer instinct? I don't know. And to me, the worst part of her quote is that essentially she's saying, I don't understand how much I'd love to understand how much they love their country. And she'd love to actually have them sit down and say it. I'd want to have that conversation, she said.
Yeah, and that was her clarification from her initial one of like, you're bringing in these foreign
guys is the phrase, right?
But you're bringing in foreign guys. Yeah. So that's an element of it, is that she seems to be discussing how dual nationals like aren't American a little bit, is how that comes across to me, at least.
It's a lot more Joseph McCarthy than Tim Howard's comment to it. It's like everyone back wanted to run a House Un-American Activities Committee for US national team players.
That would be interesting and terrifying all at once.
It would be questions about like the 1950 World Cup. You'd have to know who scored against England.
Yeah, easy enough. And then I think the other point that I've seen a lot of people make, including you, I believe, is that was Abby Wambach talking about the men's national team. She does not play for the men's national team. She doesn't know what goes on in the locker room. She might, have some information from talking to some of the players and a little bit of like background info, but she's not in the locker room. She's not on the field with the men's players.
Right.
Whereas Tim Howard kind of has that firsthand experience, and I think probably has the overall career to be able to say sort of like, I've been with the team when they've been very motivated, and I've been with the team when everything seemed lackluster, and it seems like this is an issue.
Yes, I agree with that. I think he's not just speculating from the outside, he's sort of reporting from the inside, right? That this is what happened. That if you have too many guys who are not sort of American born, it does affect the balance of the team. And the way I read this, and especially given like his follow-up comments, is not a specific criticism. This is how I see it. Not a specific criticism of Timmy Chandler or Aaron Johansson or Mix Diskerud or anyone like that, but more a criticism of how Jurgen Klinsmann built the US roster. Right?
How so? How do you mean?
Because I think what he's getting at, and I kind of agree with it, is it's maybe good to have a balance of having that sort of scrappy, American-born and raised, meaning sort of playing in MLS kind of quality, right? Where you're just super committed to the US national team and want to play that way, versus when you start bringing in, like, maybe if you bring in 2 or 3 guys who are sort of haven't played in MLS, aren't that kind of player. They maybe played for Germany and are a more classy player in many ways. Maybe it starts to tip the balance a little bit when you get too many, right? You have a 2 or 3, maybe it's a sprinkle of quality on top of the scrappiness that remains like the essence of the team. But when you have more of those guys, more of the new guys than the non-MLS guys, then you kind of lose that essential essence.
That could be. And it does make me wonder if you go back to that Brian Strauss article from, like 2013, that was about how people weren't too pleased with Klinsmann. Yeah. You start to wonder if maybe Tim Howard was one of those people he talked to. Because in that article was where you had the mention of German Americans being kind of cliquish and that they kind of did their own thing. They didn't really hang out together as a team. And it does make me wonder if maybe that's what Tim Howard is referring to, that he's used to a U.S. team. That I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm saying that I wonder if this is his point, is that he's used to an American team where everybody's together. You're all fighting together. It's all one big unit. And if you've got guys kind of breaking off and doing their own things and speaking different languages, it makes it harder maybe to be that unified team and kind of have that unified fight. Yeah. At least I think that's what he's trying to say. I don't necessarily agree with him, only because I think he's relying on passion. And we've criticized Jurgen Klinsmann so much for this idea of passion, and you have to have tenacity to play for the national team.
I agree.
And I do think that, as Jermaine Jones said in response to Tim Howard's comments, it's a slippery slope. And when you start talking about, well, do these guys have enough passion? Is this guy, does he understand what it means to be here? You start questioning that kind of loyalty, and it can lead to very bad things.
I agree. I agree with that. So I think we're kind of on the same page in that way, right? And I'd take it one step further and take this as a criticism of Klinsmann, because to me, it's possible to bring in as many dual nationals as you want, and then it's just your job to make sure that team has a fighting spirit, right? And in some ways, this is a failure. This could be read as a failure of team building, right? It was Klinsmann's job to integrate those players and to make the US team just as scrappy as it's ever been, and to prevent the cliques, right? Maybe he should be setting up team bonding exercises. Maybe he could have addressed it directly. I mean, I'm just like blue sky speculating here. Maybe he could have done like German language, English language quizzes and got everybody involved and like made it a thing and got everybody in on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think from that same Brian Strauss article, there were claims that maybe he was giving preferential treatment to those German American players.
Yeah.
And that if anything, maybe he kind of leaned into the cliques being formed and the idea of everybody's doing their own thing. We don't really need to be unified until 10 minutes before the game when I give you a formation and now play like a unit.
There's
and
also
if you
that,
don't have
right?
that as the background, then you're not going to play as a unit.
Isn't it easier to be unified and play as a unit when you have sort of a long-term plan that you're all working towards? And when it's these kind of like weird intangible things that Klinsmann wants you to do, it's really hard to focus and know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think maybe if you want to give Howard the benefit of the doubt, you could say that that's what he's leaning towards, is this idea that if you do have people from different backgrounds, people speaking different languages, that's all fine. I mean, that's what you have at club level of any big European club. But the idea is that you've got a manager who's strong and in charge and can execute a game plan and can tell you that game plan, so then you can come together as a team. If you have those cliques, if you have people speaking different languages, if you have people maybe not getting along, and you have a manager who doesn't really help steer the ship, then you've got a double problem.
So, and again, this is him kind of criticizing Klinsmann, but really praising Bruce Arena, right? Because the basis of his comments, even though the attention is all being focused on the sort of dual national player comments, the focus of what he was saying, at least in his mind, was we were lacking this for the last 2 years, but Bruce Arena brings this. So it's actually like a positive that he's trying to say, but he's revealing a negative accidentally by doing so. Right? You can even tell with the little line in the USA Today story, like the ellipses, and like he pauses for thought to think about what he's about to do.
And I think it points to, this is complete speculation on my part, but the idea of like trying to hold in your criticism of Klinsmann can lead to problems, because you do get the idea that what he wanted to do was kind of criticize Klinsmann and talk about why Bruce Arena is going to correct the kind of issues and mistakes that Klinsmann had left behind. But he really didn't think about how he was going to do that. And so it ended with him sort of attacking teammates for their passion and pride, when in reality, I do think he was trying to say, Klinsmann kind of failed us. Bruce Arena will get us back to where we need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned the passion and pride. The one big counter-argument to Tim Howard, or the criticism he's received after saying this, is, weren't you the guy that took a year off from the US national team, right? I went back and double-checked. Excuse me. It was fall 2014 to fall 2015. Howard was unavailable for US national team selection. He needed a break.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say, to play devil's advocate, his counter argument would be like, yeah, that's the point, is that if I'm not going to be fully dedicated to my team, then I withdraw myself from the team until a time when I can be. But even so, that's still seen from the opposite perspective. That's you not giving it your all. That's not being totally focused on the team 24/7. And I mean, he's equally culpable there.
I am more sympathetic to the idea of needing a break from international duty, or even from soccer entirely, like Landon Donovan did that one time. I really feel like I think you deserve a break from soccer if you think it's not doing you any good mentally, or you genuinely need to spend more time with your family, and not just in that weird, like, euphemistic way that people use it. When Howard took that year off, it sounded like it really was like, I've been away like every summer, I've got to spend some time with my family on the international breaks, and I'm okay with it, because you've got to remember that footballers are people too, and if they say I need a break and I'm going to come back strong, then I think you should give them the benefit of the doubt that that's what they really need. And the other thing I say is that when Howard came back, he did not complain, and from what I understand, worked really hard and was happy to be the number 2 US goalkeeper for quite a long time, right? Didn't he spend most of the Copa America as the number 2 keeper? And didn't really win his starting place back until the World Cup, some of the World Cup games, right? He started the game against Mexico, and we were actually doing fine until Tim Howard tore his abductor.
This is true, kind of. But I want to ask you this, though.
Wait, kind of? What part of that do you disagree with?
I mean, I think the United States was in for some trouble, regardless of whether or not he tore his abductor.
Oh, I see. Yeah. But I'm more just my point of Howard, like, his commitment. Yeah, he took a year off, but then when he came back, he even like voluntarily not voluntarily demoted himself, but was happy to be demoted and then just earn his way back in through hard work.
All right, but here's my question, though, and I think it's a deeper question that we probably won't be able to answer fully on this show. But
my favorite kind.
How much of our response to this do you think is born of the fact that we both like Timmy Howard? And we do. I mean, and you know a lot about him. Like, going to Europe, challenging himself, overcoming Tourette's, being such a hero for the United States on such so many different times, being an outspoken guy, being a nice guy by all accounts. Like, I think that filters into the way I think about this a little bit, whereas I don't know as much about Abby Wambach, and we know that Landon Donovan has at times been a little bit prickly with the media. Right. So it does make me wonder if I'm willing sort of to overlook this a little bit because of who Tim Howard is and who he is to me.
Do you mean to overlook the 1 year break, or to overlook his comments in the story?
To sort of, I guess basically, when I hear that from Timmy Howard, I think, oh, he's a really nice guy, and he's experienced so much in his life that I can't imagine that he sees German guys coming in and is like, oh, these foreign guys. I'm willing to sort of give him the benefit of the doubt and think, well, what did he really mean by that? And I don't know if I was as inclined to do that with Landon Donovan and Abby Wambach, and I'm not sure if that's just because those statements were worse from them, or if it's because I just kind of don't know them as well.
Yeah, I don't know. That is a hard one to unpack. I do think just the likability of Timmy Howard makes you want to agree with him more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if there must be some scientific study for this, but if you like a person, you're more likely to believe the things they say.
Yeah, I think so. There we go. That makes sense to me. Okay, I'm glad we've got to the bottom of this then.
Okay, so if you have any follow-up for us, contact at TotalSoccerShow.com, or you can reach us on Twitter at TotalSoccerShow.
Mm-hmm.
Before we move on, Taylor, we have a sponsor for today's show. That sponsor is RUFFNECK SCARVES. RUFFNECK SCARVES, providers of quality soccer scarves and the official scarf provider of US Soccer, USL, NCAA, and Major League Soccer.
It seems pertinent, given that you're about to do an interview with the president of the USL. Is that correct, Mr. Grove?
I am. I didn't bring up RUFFNECK Scarves with him because time was limited.
But if you had, you could have told him that they are finely manufactured. They're also the official sponsor of the Total Soccer Show scarf. Yep. So you can get those scarves for your clubs, for your country, for your college, if you are so inclined.
Maybe I should have worn a RUFFNECK scarf. I should have worn all the USL scarves in my interview with Jake Edwards. Just sat down at the desk, 81 degrees Fahrenheit, indoors, wearing 30 scarves. I'm sure he would have not been terrified.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't have looked like a lunatic there.
As you mentioned, RUFFNECK Scarves, as well as making the scarves for USL, NCAA, MLS, and US Soccer. So if you're a fan of any teams, like US National Team, any MLS team, any USL team, you can buy a scarf from RUFFNECK Scarves. It will be the real deal. It will be finely made. You can also buy a Total Soccer Show scarf. It's blue and black. It says hello and welcome on it in all caps, which is how I say hello and welcome.
Mm-hmm. And if our listeners want to get 20% off of that order, what can they do, Mr. Grove?
They go to ruffneckscarves.com, ruffneckscarves.com, enter the promo code Total Soccer Show, all one word, all uppercase, and you get 20% off your scarf, any scarf, in the RUFFNECK Scarves shop. Thank you to RUFFNECK Scarves for sponsoring today's episode.
Indeed.
All right, so now, Taylor, I'm going to set up my interview with Jake Edwards. I'll say this, it was short. It was maybe 15 minutes long, because turns out when you're the president of a soccer federation, you're a busy, busy man.
It seems that way.
Yeah, so I was escorted into USL offices by Nicholas Murray, who I believe is a compatriot of mine. Given the quick tour, it's an ever-expanding office. He was showing me how the office has been expanding. It was full of people doing things on computers, so people at USL are busy.
I feel like you're describing Skynet at this point.
You think USL is the new Skynet?
I'm just saying, like, it's ever expanding. It's constantly growing. Everyone's on computers. It's chaos everywhere. I'm a little bit nervous.
I'm just describing the 21st century, right?
That could also be.
So my interview with Jake, which you're about to hear, we touch on Division 2 sanctioning, the future of USL. We talk about USL Productions, Taylor, which you know involves the two of us, right, with our play-by-play for the Richmond Kickers. I was sure to full disclosure, mention that too. I mean, before he said, yeah, the Richmond Kickers play-by-play has been terrible this year. Right? I wanted to head that off. All right, enough rambling from me. Here is my interview with USL President Jake Edwards. Jake, thank you for talking to us. I'm here at USL HQ, which obviously I've never seen before. It is very colourful.
Good. Well, it's good to meet you. Good to have you down here.
First, I want to start with a little biography. Obviously, you're English. Mm-hmm. I knew that coming in, but I didn't know the story, sort of, how a guy from England is now president of the USL.
I've no idea either. Lucky, I guess. Or unlucky, is it? I don't know.
Well, do you know you played for Charleston Battery for a season?
Yeah,
2002. How did that happen?
So I played in England for about 10 years professionally, and I had one one season I came over here to play with Charleston Battery.
Richmond's big rivals.
Yeah, but before that I was in university. I was at James Madison University in Virginia. My family had moved over in the late 80s. So my dad was in the airlines. We moved over in the late 80s. So I got into high school in New Jersey and then ended up going to university in James Madison University. I was playing down there. So 94 to 98. We would play the kickers every spring season. Then it was Dennis Violet was the coach then.
Oh yeah, X-Men United.
Yeah, and so we played them each spring. Richmond, the university team was in the CAA conference at the time, so very familiar with Richmond. And I actually played a bit with Richmond. I think when Lee started coaching as the head coach, and Jesse Myers was the assistant.
Yeah.
So I'd spent a bit of time, played a couple of games with them then before I went back to England. So I've always been, very an affinity with Richmond, and close with Lee and Jesse and everybody that's been connected with that club. And a couple of my teammates from JMU had gone on to play at Richmond over the years. Probably most successfully was Kevin Knight, who was the captain for Richmond for many, many years. He played there for quite a few years. He was drafted out of JMU. He was a year younger than me, to the Metro Stars at the time. Then he ended up coming and had a good career with Richmond, and he's still in Richmond now. I think he was a firefighter for a while when he retired, and then opened a fitness gym, I think, in the town. So good connections to Richmond. It's great city, as you know. You live there. And as you said, I'd come over during my playing career, came over to Charleston, had a year playing with Charleston in what was the A-League then, 2001, 2002. And I think Andrew Bell is the last survivor of the group that were at the club at that time, bar the supporters who are still there.
When you were there, did you ever expect you would be sort of working like front office for the league, and not just front office, but at the head of the front office?
No, I mean, then I was.
I'm interested in how that happened.
I was 25 or 4 or 5, so I had no ambitions of working in the league. All I wanted to do was play football at that time. So, and following that. It was a tough situation then, because the A-League was a very short season. It was like 6 months. Yeah. There were some good players at Charleston at the time. Players like Mark Watson from Canadian International centre-half, who was recently coaching at Orlando. Linval Dixon, the Jamaican captain, and Terry Phelan, the left-back, and Paul Conway. I mean, we had some really good players, so it was a good team. And Charleston was very exciting then. It was a new-ish club, new stadium, really cool, pub attached to the stadium. There was a lot of exciting things happening there.
Is that still there?
Still there, yeah. She's had probably the largest private collection of football memorabilia in the US. It housed in this Tony's pub. It's tremendous. So it was a really exciting vibe there. And a lot of great things were happening, and so that was a nice time to be there. I went back to England after that, and I played for another number of years.
I want to say Warwick Business School. I read.
I did, yeah. So when I came to the end of playing, I started spending some time with a couple of the last few clubs I played with. I spent some time in the marketing departments and the commercial departments. After training, I was shadowed.
So that's where the segue starts.
Yeah, I started to shadow those department directors, and I was getting very curious and really fascinated by the business side of sport. I was doing my coaching courses and licenses, but I was far more excited to go down the business path. So I went back to school, did my masters at Warwick Business School, and through that opened a few doors for me, and I went took a job with Octagon. Octagon was an American global sports sponsorship consultancy.
So that's your link back over to here?
Yeah, I worked in their London office for a number of years. My wife and I were there in London. I was working on some pretty interesting projects, but wanted to get back into football directly. We moved back to the US in 2012, first to Atlanta. I was, through mutual friends, introduced to the owner at Orlando City, Phil Rawlins, came down, watched the match. I was introduced in the same game to Alec, who the CEO and co-owner of the USL, and we spoke at length, and We had a couple of other meetings, Alec and I liked the vision of what he wanted to do with the league.
Is that what you're implementing right now?
Yeah. So at that time it was, as I said, it was about 15 staff members here. We had 10 teams. It was just finding its feet a little bit in the sort of short space of time that Alec and his partner had acquired the league, and they were trying to stabilise and professionalise and plan a pathway forward, and that's what I wanted to do. I mean, the work I've been doing with Octium is very long-term strategic planning. So we started to... so I was very excited by Alec's vision and what he wanted to do, and I felt I could execute that. So we started putting plans in place to expand, to change the ownership dynamic at the clubs, to invest and build in stadiums, to put a broadcast and commercial platform together that made sense, and to push the league up, expand upon what we've done with the MLS, move into Division 2. All of these things are part of this kind of 10-year plan we felt we put together, and now we're coming into the last sort of phase of that, last couple of years, the last phase of that plan, and we're on track.
Yeah, excellent. The big thing you accomplished, I want to say recently, is the D2 sanctioning, provisional D2 sanctioning. It was something I followed as closely as I could with the lack of information coming out, right? It was pushed a month or so. We just got it recently. I genuinely want to say congratulations, right? It's a big deal to get that D2 sanctioning.
Thank you.
I was wondering if there's anything you could tell me about sort of, I know you can't reveal what happened in the meetings, but anything about the process. Like, I assume you had to submit your case for here's why we should be D2.
Yeah, it was quite a thorough process, pretty exhaustive process. I mean, we submitted our intent to do this to the Federation in January of 2015.
Right.
So it's almost a 2-year process, and there's quiet months and busy months, throughout those 2 years. It's been a lot of work at the league office. We've had to put hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents into the league.
Is that like US Soccer requests some documents, and you have to?
Yes. So they're analysing. Two things happen. So every year, every pro league has to submit its compliance reports for the following season, and then then the federation determine whether they'll continue to sanction you at that division. It's a fairly straightforward process, and you've got to say what you're doing on a number of key areas from a business point of view, what your clubs are doing, how they're performing, how you're going to meet the standards. If you're not compliant, how you're going to work towards meeting those standards, over the time. And so it's a status report, and then then you're given you're re-sanctioned at that division. When you're moving up a division, this is kind of new territory to the federation. So it's much more involved, and you've got to prove your case like you wouldn't believe that you warrant that moving up a designation, which is correct, right? It's a stringent process. It should be. So we've put hundreds of pages of documents on the league, how we operate the league, what our future plans are for the league, how our teams are managed, all the ownership bios. The owners were all audited by an independent financial auditing group. Site visits of every stadium, measurements of every field, counting the seats, interviewing all the front office personnel. You name it, it was done. So
I wonder, because I saw some of the stipulations where the fields had to be this size, and you had to have this many seats. And I did wonder if it was just like the US Soccer would just take your word for it. But no, someone literally comes and counts the seats.
They do.
Like 1, 2, 3, 4.
They do. So. And they don't do that. They haven't done that, but this is what they did with this application.
Right.
This is kind of new territory. So they did all of that. So it's been a lot of work by our clubs, the owners, the executives, the people at those clubs, and they've all done everything that they've been asked. We've anticipated a vote on several occasions, which kept getting moved. We had about 4 or 5 votes that were moved until we got to this kind of... at times frustrated. You feel the goalposts get moved on you from time to time, but everything we were asked to do, we did. Can
I ask you about the provisional part of that? Like, do you know when you will know when that gets removed or how that gets removed?
Well, they haven't set an exact date other than it'll be removed ahead of the 18th season.
2018.
There'll be no provisional, so there'll be some. So what we're going through right now with the federation and a new task force they've put together is, both leagues that have provisional sanctioning have been just requested to provide some more information.
Got it.
And do a few more things, and some of those things have to be done in advance of the 2017 season. We laid all that out in the application, how we would manage all of that.
Can you give us any examples of the kind of things? I know some of this has got to be somewhat confidential, but
for example, some of these stadiums need to be over a 5,000 seat capacity.
Right.
So in the case of Pittsburgh, for example, that's under. The owner there has is currently installing new sections to the stadium to add capacity to certain parts of the stadium. That was in his long-term plan anyway, but that's now been accelerated. So the same in Colorado Springs, that was a couple of hundred seats under. That's now going to be pushed over that 5,000 seats. And the owners are just providing a roadmap, how they're going to do that, what's the timelines, who they're going to use to do that, where they're going to put the seats, etc. And those are the things that the Federation have requested to see, the roadmap, and we've presented that as part of our application. So in terms of the 2017 season, all of those things just need to be addressed to remove the provisional sanctioning.
I have one strange question. I know it sounds strange when I ask it, but this is something that our listeners have asked us. Why does it matter to be D2 or D3? Like when in some ways it's just a tag that goes with the league. So why is it something that's important? I'd love to get the.
Well, it's incredibly important. In the absence of a promotion relegation system, it's not necessarily a merit-based tag. But it's actually even more important. Our owners are across the country investing millions and tens of millions of dollars into their clubs, into the stadium infrastructure. We've invested about a little over $100 million in stadium improvements over the last 12 months alone. A number of them are building fantastic facilities. 10,000-seat stadium going to be launched in the Rio Grande Valley for this season. Many of the teams now are investing heavily in academies like Richmond. Tremendous academies. They're doing all the right things in terms of player development and building for the future. Training facilities, investing in front office staff to sell more tickets and sponsorships and do all the things they need to do at a sophisticated level.
But people would say that maybe you could do that at D3 level and it'd be the same. So is there something about having this designation?
Well, my point is the teams and the owners are making that investment.
I see.
They're making that investment into the club to operate at the highest level.
So it deserves the recognition.
When they go out into the marketplace locally, and we see it nationally, when you go out into the marketplace locally and you're talking to media partners, you're talking to your local TV companies, you're talking to advertisers, you're talking to sponsors, it matters. When you say, I'm Division 2, I'm one behind MLS,
I see.
This is what Division 2 looks like, versus I'm Division 3. And
this is especially if these people don't know soccer.
And if they don't know, you would assume one is better than the other.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
In the absence of a promotion relegation, it's not merit-based. So you're just going to assume one's better than the other. Now, when you're making that kind of investment to operate at a very high level, and you put an extremely competitive product on the field, and you're building stadiums and you're doing all the right things, you want some validation of that, you want some acknowledgement of that, and that's what they've got now from the Federation, and you want to see the benefits of that. You don't want to be in the marketplace and not be able to talk to or not be able to get that deal that you need. When we're talking to media partners, whether it's national media partners or international media partners, it matters. Perception of Division 2 versus 3 matters.
Yeah.
We believe that we've been operating at that level or higher. We believe our team owners are investing at that level or higher. Do we all have work to do? Are there still some areas that we need to improve? Absolutely. But it needs to be, that level of investment needs to be, appreciated and accepted, and the validation of that through this decision is very important. So the teams are going to see a difference when you're looking at revenue streams, you're looking at franchise valuations of the club.
Yeah.
You're looking at the ability to go out in the marketplace and get those deals at a higher dollar value. The ability for us to strike a national TV deal, which we're in the middle of doing right now, it affects that for sure. Players and coaches that are especially from overseas, but that are looking at getting into the league, it matters, what division you are. So it's something our owners felt very strongly about, as did we. And it's as I said, I commend the board for making the decision. The Federation have recognised what we've done over the last few years, what the owners have committed to do over the last few years, and the picture we've painted, the strategic vision and what we want to do over the next couple of years certainly influenced that vote.
Do I have time to ask one more question about that? What is she said there was like a 10-year plan and you were towards completion. Is there anything that sort of D2 obviously is one of those things. What else is sort of next 2-3 years?
Yeah, so the big investment we're making now, and it's a $10 million investment into the broadcast. So the broadcast has been a challenge for the league over the last few years. Now with the building of some tremendous stadiums that we're seeing now, whether that's RGV, whether it's San Antonio, Oklahoma City, Sacramento, some great stadiums now, and you're going to have some great improvements in Richmond at the stadium there over the next few years. So we want to showcase those buildings. We want to showcase the quality of the players we have in our league, which is tremendous goals we're seeing. We're investing heavily in a new broadcast platform. Which
USL Productions?
USL Productions. So for the first time now, we as a league are going to, with our partners Vista World Link in South Florida, remotely broadcast all 500 plus games. In the past, the teams have done it themselves to varying degrees of quality.
Yeah.
And
I should say, full disclosure, I'm one of the play-by-play guys for the Richmond Kickers.
Good.
And I believe we'll be coming back 2017. So.
As long as you do a good job. All the good play-by-play guys can stay. It's so important as we are talking to national partners, as we are looking to showcase the league, that we have a standardized production, that the quality is good.
Yeah.
The camera work is good. The graphics are great. Everything needs to feel a certain way. So we're going to take over that with our partners and some great consultants, World Cup production consultants we're using. We tested the remote broadcast model this last season with our 20 games on ESPN3, including the championship final on ESPNU. On the strength of that, we've got the model down now, and we feel very confident coming into this season about the quality of the production. I'm sure with any new venture there's going to be some hiccups along the way, but we're going to see, and the fans are going to see, a massive increase in quality of the games. For this, you'll be able to watch your team in your local market on your local cable television, your local sports channels, your local RSNs when your team's home and when your team's away now. You'll still be able to stream all the games live on our digital platform, and there'll be some national televised games as well. So we'll be announcing that in the coming weeks in terms of the media partners.
I see.
We're also...
Well, that's literally being negotiated right now.
It's being finalised right now in terms of the games. Once the schedule's released in the next couple of days, those games will be selected for the broadcasts, and that announcement can come.
Just every Richmond Kickers game, I'm imagining.
Every Richmond Kickers game will be the we'll have to make a note of that. So the broadcast is a major initiative for us. On the back of the broadcast is a new commercial program we're putting together. So we're now we'll be bringing on some really great commercial partners into the league to help push us all forwards. So two sort of main initiatives we're working on. We continue to want to innovate digitally. This season we'll have all of the teams now on the new digital platform, the league central digital platform, so we'll be able to get content across everyone, all teams' websites. Our new partnership with Opta is going to give a tremendous amount of data and analytics around the games.
So we get USL stats?
Yeah, so that's all going to be incorporated into the production, into the broadcast, into the web.
When I'm doing the play-by-play, will I be able to look at how many passes this guy's completed?
You'll get all of that information before the game as well. So you'll have all the past history of each player. You'll have all the data in front of you. So you're going to it's going to make your job maybe not easier, but you're going to have a lot more information in front of you. So I think that's a big improvement for us. So we continue to try and focus on that digital piece and try and stay ahead of or keep up with where technology is going. So there'll be a couple more announcements this year on expansion clubs coming into the league for 18 and 19. So we'll continue to grow. And we'll continue to have some exciting new announcements coming.
Can I expect a central conference at some point? Because I see the East-West map growing and growing.
Yeah,
I'm starting to see this cluster in the middle.
We've been focusing on certain areas of the country to get to that. We started with a single national league, and we started with a team in Orange County. It was the first West Coast team, and they had to feel the pain for a few years as the only team out there, and then we've managed to build that up a little bit. We've got a few more expansion markets on the West coming in over the next 2 years. it has been a plan between the league and the Board of Governors to get to a 3-conference model, and we targeted that for 2018.
Okay.
I feel confident we'll get there. We've got a few more expansion clubs to bring in the league in 2018 and 19, some of which will be also in the Central Conference. So I do feel that by 2018 that will be a reality if we want to go in that direction. So I think a 3-conference model makes sense. We'll still have a playoff format that makes sense. That gives us that national footprint we always talk about, but regionalises the competition and builds more of those regional rivalries. We've seen a lot of fans travelling to the away games more than ever this season. That'll continue. So I think distinct possibility that 2018 we can break out a Central Conference.
Jake, I know you got to get going, but I want to say thank you. You're a busy man. The life of a president, never easy, right? But thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for popping in. Enjoy your time in Florida, and look forward to seeing you again up in Richmond.
Thanks. So there you go, Taylor. That was my interview with Jake Edwards, USL president. If any other presidents would like a Total Soccer Show interview, I'm sure we could swing that.
Yeah, I mean, President Obama was on Pod Save America earlier today, so I'm sure we're the next stop, right?
Yeah, but they all used to work for him, right? So I'm not sure we have the same connections.
Yeah. I also like that they were still kind of mocking the idea of a podcast having any sort of like reach or impact. I was like, thanks, guys. It's what we do for a living.
Is cool. That so? People might not be familiar with the show, but if you are, bear with us. Is that because they maybe feel a little guilty that they're not still working in politics? Instead, they've gone to work in podcasting.
That could be, yeah, I think so.
Maybe podcasting is the new cashing in.
I mean, I guess so. If like,
it doesn't feel like it, but
it does not. It really doesn't. With all those lucrative multi-million-dollar podcasting deals out there, yeah, it's really cashing in.
Speaking of cashing in, did you see the Onion article about Bo, the Obama's dog, taking a job as a lobbyist on K Street?
For which of the many lobbies?
I can't remember which lobby it was, but definitely touting. I suppose Big Dog is who you'd have to work for.
Yeah, Big Dog Food. Yeah,
just Big Dog. They lobby for big dogs.
Oh, okay.
All right, I feel like we've got off track a little bit. We should get back to the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. It is epic today, Taylor. I think we have 12. We have more than a full team of Total Soccer Show scouts, about half American, so lots of cool American updates, and some fancy foreigners, as Abby Wambach and Tim Howard might call them.
Indeed. Up first, we've got a report from Andy Hollums scouting Julian Green, the 21-year-old who we all know. Julian Green started and played the first half in Stuttgart's exhibition match with MSV Duisburg. The match ended 0-0, but Green earned some praise from his new manager, Hans Wolf. Quote, "It was clear to see that he has distinct qualities and that he can help us further. He certainly still needs some match practice, but he'll get that over the next few days and week."
So that's just he needs to get match fit, basically, because he hasn't been playing much, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. I wonder what the distinct qualities are. Maybe that's another conversation to have with Tim Howard.
Or maybe we're better to have it with Hans Wolf.
Yeah, probably so.
I think the Bundesliga 2 is back in action like January 28th or so. Is that right? I think we'll be hearing more about Julian Green when he plays, if he plays, his first proper game for Stuttgart. That
will work. What have we got next?
Up next, Jay Glenn is scouting Portuguese phenom Ruben Neves, 19-year-old midfielder for Porto. Jay says Ruben Neves suffered a rupture in the back of his left thigh in training on January 10th. That's a translation of the Portuguese from Google, so I'm not sure. I'm sure it's imperfect, and I take it to mean some kind of hamstring issue. He has since been unable to train, and the club says he's getting treatment and has given no estimate on his return. This is a shame, given that he had started getting meaningful minutes for Porto. I've seen highlights of Neves. I'm always impressed by this guy's skills.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, he's quick, he's fast, he's clever. Unfortunately, I think maybe he heard you call him a phenom, and then his left thigh immediately gave out as a result. You put that jinx on him.
Who's next?
Stephen Haller scouting Miles Robinson, the 19-year-old defender for Atlanta United. He was taken number 2 overall in the Super Draft by Atlanta United. Stephen says, "I'll be curious on how he fits as the team comes together, but a number 2 pick should translate into some solid minutes." Miles was also called into the U20s again and has become a standard for that team.
Yeah, so if you've looked at the US Under-20 roster, it feels kind of... I don't know if it's just because we're more familiar with the players' names who are Under-20 because of the Scouting Network, but it Is it? All right. But it makes it feel kind of strong to me.
It does. It definitely does. But there's that kind of feeling of like, oh, I know all these guys, but I don't know if I would if I weren't doing a 5-day-a-week show in which we have an elaborate scouting network that focuses on young and exciting players.
But top of my head, right, there's Miles Robinson, who's like a real big guy. I expect we'll see him for Atlanta this year, I'm hoping. You got Austin Trusty, who I know he's with Philadelphia Union's affiliate last year. You got Eric Palmer-Brown, who was over at the aforementioned Porto, right, from Sporting KC. A lot of talent. I think Redding from Orlando, who maybe was partly to blame for Orlando's bad defensive season, but at least he's been playing MLS minutes, right? That's some legit minutes.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I guess we're done talking about young, promising Americans in the draft.
Up next, Zach Lindquist is scouting Jackson Ewell, the 19-year-old attacking midfielder who now officially plays for San Jose Earthquakes. Zach apologised profusely for the delay in emailing about his scoutee. Ewell was drafted 6th overall by the San Jose Earthquakes. I thought it was 5th, but okay. This came as a surprise to many since Ewell is typically thought of as a creative midfielder and doesn't fit with Dom Kinnear's Route 1 preferences. Regardless, Jackson joins a large contingent, easy for me to say, of young midfielders in San Jose, including Fateh Alashe, 24-year-old, TSS favourite Tommy Thompson, 21, Tommy Train, and Mark Pelosi, 22 years old. You're apparently connected well with the coaches and used the phrase super excited, end quote, a lot in his interview. He also says that he sees himself as a number 8 who can pick out passes no one else can see, but can also get back and defend, so he's not short in confidence.
No, he is not. Much more information from Zach. Zach, thank you for that report. Many thanks as well to Steven Novak, scouting Nicholas Sule. Is that how you pronounce that?
I'm going with Sula.
Sula. All right, Sula works for me. 21-year-old Hoffenheim center back for now.
Oh, what's happened?
Bayern Munich have won the race to sign the youngster. Chelsea and Liverpool had expressed interest in him over the summer, but I'm sticking with Sule. Sule responded by pledging his allegiance to Hoffenheim. That's evidently the kind of allegiance that evaporates as soon as Bayern come calling. It remains to be seen what role he'll play and how much time he'll get playing behind Hummels and Boateng, but needless to say, and it's an exciting transfer in the heat of the moment.
Oh, the Bayern train keeps rolling.
And it always will.
Next up, Craig Allison is scouting Milot Rashica, the 20-year-old right winger for Vitesse Arnhem. Milot has played 20 matches with Vitesse this season, much better, starting 18 and scoring 3 goals. He's added 2 more in the Dutch Cup. He also had a momentous 2016 as he made the switch from Albania's national team to Kosovo's, where he already has 4 starts.
And based on that information, I'm going to say Milo. That's going to be my pronunciation.
Oh, he's going to be a teammate of Matt Miazga, right?
He is a teammate of Matt Miazga. Yeah, and in the sense that he's on the field and Matt Miazga waves to him from the bench, then yes, they're teammates.
He plays sometimes.
Yeah, occasionally. Up next, we've got a report from Matt Anderson scouting Godfred Dunsa, the 20-year-old Ghanaian midfielder for Bologna.
I believe it's pronounced Bologna.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me. Bologna. The 21-year-old midfielder who was once dubbed the next Michael Essien and got looks from Europe's top clubs has had a slow start to the Serie A season, in part due to injury. He only has 4 league appearances as of January 18th. He did score in their Coppa Italia match, which they lost 3-2 to Inter Milan, eliminating them from that tournament. But at least he scored that on January 17th, which means maybe he's back into consideration.
Oh, is that the same Coppa Italia match where the Colombian defender, was it Moreau? I've forgotten his name. Scored that crazy bicycle kick, scissor kick.
Sure.
You haven't seen that highlight doing the rounds?
I have not seen that highlight.
Get yourself over to Reddit Soccer, Taylor. It's all up on there. Up next, David Hultengren is scouting Enes Unal, the 19-year-old striker for FC Twente on loan from Manchester City. The new Hakan Şükür, I believe I've heard him called. David says, I checked in on Unal and it seems he has cooled down somewhat after his blazing hot start. He now has 10 league goals on the season, which is still good enough for second place in the league. But he's only scored 3 in his previous 9 matches. That's still 1 in 3, right? That's not bad.
That's not bad.
If I was doing that, I'd be happy. It appears the Eredivisie has just returned from winter break, so we'll see if he picks up where he left off, or if he can recreate the magic from the opening few weeks of the season. If you pay any credence to transfer market valuations, the transfer market, the German website with the final E missing. Transfermarkt. He has nearly doubled in value from around 2.5 to 4.7 million pounds since the beginning of his loan, which seems to indicate that he has exceeded expectations thus far.
Indeed.
More Man City
for that.
More Man City strikers later in this episode.
But first, another Premier League striker, scouted by Jeff Emelin. It's Patrick Bamford, the 23-year-old forward for Middlesbrough. Jeff thanked us for mentioning Bamford's move to Borough, but wanted to clarify that he was on loan with Palace and Norwich last year, not Borough.
Apologies.
He last played for Middlesbrough in the 2014-2015 season when he was their top scorer, which maybe explains why they are willing to pay some money to get him back officially with the club.
Curse my faulty memory. Yes. So this is when he had the great season in the Championship, right? And he was absolutely killing it. No wonder they want him back. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that all makes a lot more sense now.
This is true.
Okay, I'm glad that's been corrected. Up next, Nihal Qatar scouting Mukwele Akale and Anthony Robinson. Akale is how you pronounce that, right? Akale is the 19-year-old left winger for Villarreal. I believe Anthony Robinson is in the Everton under-23s or possibly even lower. Okay, yeah. Nihal says Akale continues to get playing time for Villarreal's C team in the 4th division of Spanish football and has scored in each of his last 2 matches. He scored a stoppage time winner against SCD. Let's go with CD.
Torrevieja.
Thank you. That's the one. That's what I was going to say. On January 10th. And then again, 5 days later in Villarreal C's 3-1 win over Cia CF. Akele was not called into the latest U20 camp, and it appears as he was because he was not released by the club. Yeah, I mean, that's what's happening, right? If you're a high-profile player, you're not getting released to the U20s. I think that goes for Josh Perez at Fiorentina, and it obviously goes for Christian Pulisic as well, for many reasons.
Indeed.
As for Anthony Robinson, the 19-year-old defender for Everton, American, of course, he played recently for Everton's U23s as they beat Andrija Novakovic and Reading 3-0 in the Premier League 2. Oh, Novakovic is the big American striker, right? Nihal didn't find any reports on how he played, but he did go the full 90.
There we are. Final report for today's show comes from Tyler Dunaway, scouting Gabriel Jesus, the 19-year-old forward for Manchester City, now officially. Tyler says it's been quiet on the Gabriel Jesus front because his paperwork has held up for weeks. Finally, he has officially joined Manchester City and is eligible to play this weekend against Tottenham.
Ooh, okay. So, this is... Can we talk about this for a second? We haven't done full research into this preview, but... It is Man City v Tottenham this Saturday, 12:30 Eastern. This seems like a huge game for Pep because it seems to me this is where, maybe partly the Celtic Champions League game, but this is where the wheels started to come off, right? When Spurs pressed Man City and really just destroyed them when they tried to play out from the back. This would be the perfect chance for Pep to somehow turn it around. Maybe it's Gabriel Jesus coming off the bench for his debut and scoring a winner.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that. I wouldn't be surprised to see Pep do something kind of crazy because that's what he tends to do, and especially that's what he tends to do in high-pressure situations. So I'm excited to see his weird, 2-2-6 formation that he's going to trot out for no reason. I think the interesting place to look when you see the lineups will be Manchester City's midfield because that diamond with Yaya Toure at the base and Zabaleta and De Bruyne in the middle and Silva ahead absolutely did not work, right, at the weekend against Everton. So I wonder if he'll stick with Toure. I know Fernandinho is not back. He's still suspended for, basically slapping Cesc Fabregas. No, Fabregas slapped him. Fernandinho grabbed Fabregas by the neck and pushed him over, right? So Fernandinho still suspended. Gundogan injured. I think it's time for Fabian Delph. Pep Guardiola may disagree. One of us knows more about soccer, and it's not me. And just to show you how bad things are at Man City, I think actually he's suspended for getting a red card since that red card against Chelsea. I think he got one against Burnley, which means he's now getting a 4-match ban. So he'll miss. He's already missed 2 games. He'll miss this Tottenham game and then one more, I think, against Crystal Palace.
Oh, Fernandinho.
Yeah, not great from him. Not great from him.
All right, so that game is this weekend. I think, Taylor, we've agreed that this will be the final Total Soccer Show of the week, right? This is like a Thursday/Friday show, mostly because I'm down here in St. Petersburg. I want to have a little day to sort of have a look around. And also, I went late, yesterday's show, the interview with George Qureshi was a little bit late. I want to blame George because he invited me to play in his 5-a-side league, and that's kind of what held me up for the rest of the day.
Sure, put it all on George. Put that evil on him.
It's all George Qureshi's fault.
Yep, I like it.
Should say George Qureshi has been a wonderful host while I've been down here. So thumbs up to Howler Magazine for that.
That's good.
All right, Taylor. So as we come towards the end of the week... Oh, also Mike Moon gave us permission via email that sometimes we're allowed 4-day weeks. He said that specifically.
I forget. Yeah, he did. So thank you to Mike. Yeah. Blame it all on Mike, listeners, if you're sad we're only talking 4 instead of 5 days.
So I believe we'll be back early next week, Taylor. I'll be on the road, but I think you'll have a show out on Monday. Is that right?
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan indeed. All right, if you would like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, you can do so at totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. If you are waiting on your scout, email us with the subject line Itchy Feet. I know people have emailed us this week. I will use some free time to get to those emails and make sure people get their scouts this week. Sound fair?
Sounds fair.
Sounds fair to me. All right, Taylor, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We, of course, always appreciate it. And we'll talk to you again after the weekend.